Hi everybody, Beth here from Access Paranormal for this week's I Want to Know, which is all about can animals come back as spirit? Thank you so much for all your comments so far. They've been really, really awesome. I've loved all the different ideas that people have and also the different experiences that people have had as well with particular animal spirits. Now, again, use the comment section below if you've got some ideas or experiences yourself that you haven't been able to use as well. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube, please, by all means, use the comment section available there too as well. Hi, Glenn, how are you? So yeah, this is a really interesting topic because a lot of the time as investigators, we're dealing with hauntings when it comes to people. So when it comes to actually the possibility of hauntings from an animal perspective, it's a whole other ball game because, of course, the mechanics of it doesn't really work the same way as it possibly could if it was just for humans. Now, as we know, ghosts and spirits haven't been proven by science as of yet, but we're looking this from a perspective of, you know, if they did and people have had experiences, something's going on. How will we look at it? How will we try and explain it? What is there a way to throw some ideas out there of why this particular phenomena can happen? Hi, Chrissy. Hi, Natalie. Kaz, yay. How are you? Hey, Raylene. Good to see you here too. Romper room. So anyway, so this is a really cool topic. Really, really cool topic. And I had lots and lots of fun doing a bit of research on the background of it as well because there are so many different stories out there about you know, experiences that people have had, and a couple of famous ones. There's a castle in Wales that has a monkey that was murdered, but apparently this particular monkey can be seen laughing and heard laughing as well. So there's a murdered laughing monkey in a castle in Wales. There's also the story of the bear that's actually seen in the Tower of London, which I love. So that's a bucket list place to investigate, which I never will because it's owned by the Crown. But anyway, one can live in hope. But there's that as well. So there's a bear, like, hello, there's really interesting kind of stuff. Janine Tarso, I hope you are well, lovely lady, and I hope you do get a chance to watch this too. Janine lives in Nevada, right near Vegas, and she said driving out of Vegas into Hoover Dam, there's actually a pet cemetery. So I haven't even remotely gone down the part of you know, looking at pet cemeteries at all, obviously respectfully as we do as investigators. And apparently you know, on the way through there or around that area, there's been sightings of a ghost elephant. So I'm like, imagine that. That would be awesome. So hi Nix, how are you? Good to see you here, sweetheart. So yeah, all different types of story. There are so many different stories and experiences that people have. So there has to be something going on, right? And even for us that deal with private cases, we you know, there often can be, you know, stories that people will say that, you know, I feel my pet with me, and a lot of the times people have that connection. We'll talk a little bit about that very, very soon. So I'll go into the first idea of a possibility to explain maybe why this kind of stuff might actually be happening. Now, a lot of in the parapsychological sort of research, base research and survival hypothesis is whether consciousness survives outside the body. So that's from the human perspective. So of course, then we take it from that sort of side of it and look at it for, well, what happens when it's from an animal's perspective? Do animals have a consciousness? And if they do, then does that also survive once they pass as well? Do they have free choice? Do they have, you know, the emotion and all the sort of stuff that's tied in with that? So that'll be the first thing you would look at if you were to strip it back and go, okay, well, why is this happening? Because the mechanics are very, very different. So that's what thing I would look at first there. Also, another point would be whether or not a particular animal has kind of evolutionized enough to get to that point. That's my cat having an evolutionary moment. No, sweetheart. Talk about animals. I fucking love them. So, anyway, so she's actually had that, you know, she's obviously hearing me talking and thinks I'm talking to her. She is alive, by the way. She does have a pulse. You got to stay, sweetie. I'm talking. The timing. So yeah, so you know, the evolution of animals, like they adapt to their environment, they adapt to the way in which they, you know, like say for instance Missy here, who's freaking 18.5 years old, is quite vocal. You know, her seeing and hearing is quite sharp, and you know that she can see and hear quite well. So maybe, you know, obviously is that something that can actually travel through to, you know, for when she passes away as well? Does she have that ability to have that carry on too? Because as we say, as above, so below, right? So there's that. Emotion as well. When an animal passes, some people might be very, very drawn to their animal or very attached to their animal. And we often know as investigators that, if we're looking at particular haunted cases, somebody might, stay because they feel someone grieving a lot, or there might be unfinished business. So how would that work from an animal perspective? It'd be very, very interesting. Like, again, it's that, consciousness sort of angle. Does that actually happen at all? Also, at the same time, I found it really interesting where, even if it's from an emotional perspective, people will have cases where, say, for instance, somebody's living in a particular home, they have an animal or a rowdy cat, and the rowdy cat decides to kick the bucket, and they still live in that place, but then they move out, and then somebody moves in, and then they end up having experiences with the particular animal as well. So sometimes, there's the possibility of animals actually being, tied to the land as well, or tied to a location. Again, is this by choice? Is this by consciousness as well? So that's also something to think about too. Hi Mel, how are you? Hi Ben, how are you, mate? So there's that too. Sometimes I think some animals and people might be very, very close, where they might even have a psychic connection too. So in life possibly, and then of course once that animal has passed in death, does that psychic connection break? Do they still feel that animal around because that connection, or is it more because that animal is still haunting that location? So again, something else to think about. I still think it's very interesting is that with humans, we know that some of the oldest hauntings and stories of hauntings have been 100, 150 years, which is a longish time for us. Written history, as we know. Is it any different for an animal? Does an animal haunt or possibly haunt a location in a much shorter time span because they lived a much shorter time span, or is it purely down to intent? So now we've got the peacock going off in the background for those who can hear. It sounds like somebody's dying. I picked a fabulous time to do this. All the animals are having their say, aren't they? Wonderful. Just love nature. So it's been, that's the other thing as well. So is there a time span? Is there does it change because animals haven't lived as long as us? And does that also affect it when it comes to particular hauntings, or it purely is intention and or possible consciousness there as well? Now, I did bring up the topic of dinosaurs, and there's been some really interesting comments about that as well. One saying something about ectoplasm and energy, but I think it was Debbie. Then thank you for that, sweetheart. But I don't think you're far off from a possible idea of why that might be the case. Is because we know the second law of thermodynamics, which means energy doesn't die, it changes form. But 65 million years is a long time. And if you haven't crossed over, wow, you have issues. But jokes aside, it's a long, long period of time. It's millennia. And, as the first law of thermodynamics actually kind of counteracts the second one, which means the fact that energy can slowly pass. It can actually be burnt up by heat, like with a body decomposing. So, from that point of view, maybe so much time has passed where the energy literally has had no choice but to dissipate, that was just we were never going to see them in a spectral way. Another thing too to keep in mind is that we're so used to seeing animals like cats and dogs, and sometimes maybe even birds, where I've never seen a dinosaur. I certainly feel like one sometimes, but sometimes that might even be the case. The fact that because we can't conceptually see what it would look like, maybe that we can't ever understand and ever see it from a spectral perspective or a spirit perspective. But there's a couple of ideas there as well to sort of think about too. Hi Charmaine, good to see you, sweetheart. So there's that too. I also am intrigued about not just your standard sort of spirit animal, but also negative spirit animals as well. And I think that might even be another I want to know as well, whether why they may, if they have a consciousness, then why would they be negative, or were they negative when they were alive and quite full of hate, or whatever the case may be, if that's the same also once they pass as well. Now, if you are really interested in any more of this fantastic topic, when you don't get interrupted by a four-legged 18-and-a-half-year-old elderly cat, there is a podcast that actually deals with experiences that people have had with animals that have passed on, and it's called petlife.com/paranormal, but I will post it in the links below, and I'll also post it in the YouTube video as well. So thank you for your patience, because some people don't clearly. Until the next exciting episode.